We'll do a review of Lekutei Sichos in Chelik Yudches, volume 18, the first Sicha for the portion of Korach. As when you read the Pashut, simple meaning of the story of Korach and the people that argued against Moshe, it seems that these people were terrible people, they were evil people, and as much as you read about it and the Meforshim, they keep on bringing out the negative about Korach. But on the other hand, when we learn in Chassidus, we learn that actually Korach is so bad, his intentions and everything that he wanted to accomplish. So how do we fit in these two ideas? The way it's a pipshat, which seems to say that Korach was terrible, and the other extreme you have, according to Derech HaSoid, according to Chassidus, Korach and his group were not so bad. Matter of fact, they had very good intentions. The Rebbe will bring out that even in Pshat, you can see that Korach was not really so bad. The Rebbe is going to reconcile, notwithstanding that these are two different styles of study, the level of Pshat and the level of Soid, but yet it's one Torah, and therefore the Rebbe is going to show that even in the Pshat, we can see that Korach was not just, as simply stated, evil, but there was also some positive. And the Rebbe brings out the idea that they wanted to be Kohanim Gedolim, even to serve for a while, for that great connection that brings with the Eibishter, as we'll see in the Sikh. But first, the Rebbe wants to bring out that while Torah has four parts, Pshat, Remesh, Drush, Soid, various different ways how to study the Torah, but yet it's one Torah, so we can't really accept that things should be like extreme from one interpretation of Torah to the other, that they are just totally contradictory. And that's why the Rebbe is going to try to reconcile that. Aleph. Says Yedua, it's known as the Torah is Torah Achas. That the Torah, it's one Torah. And the vier Eifanim von Pardes, the four ways of Pshat, Remesh, Drush, Soid, the simple meaning, the hint, the expansion, and the secret of Torah, the different levels, Stelun alle zusammen, so they all put together a Torah Achas Shleima, one Torah, a whole Torah, from all these different interpretations and styles of study of Torah. This is emphasized, this concept that it's really one, in the language that the Zohar uses, with regards to the inner part of Torah and the revealed part of Torah. So the Zohar refers to this as dos is nishmasa ungufa. It's like a soul and a body. A soul and a body are fused and they become one. Das heißt, this means as they seinen an Neshama und Guf und ein Zach, that they are a soul and a body of one matter. It's not two separate items. So that same thing is all the different styles of Torah, Pshat, Remesh, Drush, and Soid are really a makeup of one whole Torah. So according to this, we need to understand in our portion, in the portion of Korach, B'negeya zu machlokes Korach, as far as it relates to this argument, this fight that Korach launched against Moshe Rabbeinu. In Pnimius HaTorah, in the inner part of Torah, is Mevuer Barucha. It explains at length der Goydel Hamayla Umadrege from Korach, the great level and the step of which Korach was on. He was on a very high level. Und der Teuchen Neile von sein Teine, and also the elevated and high level of his argument. Bis zum Biur, to the extent that it's explained as ein Toes is given, nor it says that his mistake was only das was had gemont azah seder an hoga, that he was demanding that there should be such a type of a conduct at that point, which is as the Levim zon veren kahanim. He wanted kahuna, he wanted bin kahanim. This is actually going to happen. This is only going to be in the future to come. So at that time, the Levim will be the kahanim. He wanted that should happen at that time. Mashenkin in the Zman. As opposed when there is the time today, we need to do the Torah mitzvahs, which is Bisman Hazeh, Ken Hazan Hogen Nidzayin. So such a conduct cannot take place. This is Mevuer Barucha in Chassidus, as explained at length in Chassidus. Ober in Derech Hapshat. So, see, this is in the Chassidus explains the greatness of Korach's argument. He wanted the Levim should be Kohanim. It's not time yet for that. But then when you read in the simple meaning, in Derech Hapshat, which is Pshuto Shel Mikra, in the simple meaning of the Pasuk, Lernt men durch ois, so we continuously study wegen dem Goydel HaYerida, about the great descent, V'hanefila, and the fall from Korach, of Korach. How far he descended and how far he fell. Und dem Goydel ha'oinesh from Korach v'chol adosoi, and the great punishment of Korach and all of his community for their machlokes, for their fight, for their arguments. V'mevur baruch in Pashtus Aksuvim, as explained at length in the simple text of the verses. Unoch veri mefarshat Torah, and more even in Mefarshat Torah. So the Rebbe explains, while this is not a strong question, so strong because it's still two parts of the Torah, but yet we should try to find a reconciliation over here between the simple and the inner meaning of the explanation of Korach. It's actually not such a strong question, but although there is only one Torah, which means one Torah that the different interpretations are really the same Torah, as we said before, the Neshama and the Guf, is noch for, so notwithstanding that, but still, Yeder Chelik b'Torah, every portion, section of Torah, every part of Torah, Shayach to an ander olam umadrega, it relates, it belongs to a different world and a different step, a different level. Al derech v'yeder chelik in Torah, similar that every section in Torah, hot zaynes spezielle klolim, has its special rules, the way you study it. In the spiritual level, each section of Torah corresponds to another spiritual level of world. So it is a different space. It has its own rules. So it's not so difficult to understand that in one world, this is the interpretation, the other world, it's on the other way. But yet, the Rebbe says, because still, we still need to explain. As the Dale Chelke Torah, Zainen Neged the Daled Olam, since the four sections of Torah, they correspond to the four worlds, to Atzilus Bri Yitzirasiya. Was ein Olam wird nicht Talschul von dem Zweiten. One world evolves from the other one. So that means that they come from each other. And so therefore it should also turn out as oich in chelek hapshat, that also in the portion in which we study the simple meaning, there should be expressed in a gewissen prat minimally in some area, in some detail, we should feel the meile von Korach v'tanose, the greatness of Korach and his argument. So we should find something in the pshat al derech vidosis barchove in chelik from previous Torah. Similarly, we find this in a very wide way in the inner part of Torah. So we should find something in the pshat along those lines. So the Rebbe will now bring out by introducing that it was actually even in pshat that we can see that the actions of the people that went along with Korach had some really lofty goals and purposes in it. And that explains, even in the pshat, various different actions that they took. So the first question would be, why would they agree to bring the Ketores, which eventually brought to their death? They knew that Moshe Rabbeinu threatened them. They saw Nodav Avihu. It means that they were ready for that. So let's see inside. Base. So we'll understand this. Bahagdim, einige shailas v'diyukim, by first introducing several questions and specifics that we see in the Pshutum Shel Kesuvim, in the simple verse, in the verse, as we learn the verses. Number one, the question becomes, Vi hoben de chamishim u'masayim ish. How did the 250 men that joined, the leaders that joined Korach, maskim given, they agreed to makriv zayin ketorev, to offer the incense? As Moshe Rabbeinu tested them, and he says each one should bring their pan with ketoides and Aaron, and we'll see what happens. And then we know whatever happened, that the fire came out and they were all consumed, the 250. So how come they agreed for that test? They knew that in the ketoides, Nodav Avihu were burnt. Azazor was his makriv ketoides. And if a non-kohen who offers ketoides is a mischayev benafshe, he is guilty for his soul, meaning he deserved the death penalty. So why did they agree to it? Now, we do find in the Medrash and in Rashi that they went on it anyways, because they, no matter what, they were ready to just to defy and disagree with Moshe Rabbeinu, but that also needs, the Rebbe explains, and that needs explanation. Das was wird bewornt in Medrash and in Pirush Rashi. This, that the Medrash and Rashi, they answer, they say, V'loi tipshim hoyu, were they not fools? Shekach hisra b'hem, he warned them such. V'kivlu aleihem l'korev, and they accepted to go ahead and bring this offering. Elohim chotu al nafsheiso, but rather they sinned on their souls. So they didn't care. So that doesn't really seem to really answer much the question, because that itself, this needs explanation. This needs still to explanation. What caused them, brought them to such a sin, that they were ready to give up their lives? Why? There has to be something. The Rebbe will point, that's in the pshat, the advantage of being able to be maktir ketores, they were ready to give up their life, as we'll see. Base. Steht in Medrash und in Pirush Rashi benegei zu Dibur Moshe. It's brought down in the Medrash and Rashi what Moshe Rabbeinu said to them. And Moshe Rabbeinu was saying to them that he also wants to be a kohen godly, also wants to be maktir the ketores. How would Moshe Rabbeinu join? Even just saying that, how would he join? But just by saying something which is wrong. I mean, being part of them. It says in the Medrash and Rashi as far what Moshe said. It says, Zois asu kichu lochem machtus. Do this, take these pans, put the ketores. As Moshe masbir given, what did Moshe explain to them? It says in the Medrash and Rashi, Anu ein lanu elo Hashem echad chulu. We have one God. We kohen gadol echad. We only have one kohen gadol. That's Aaron. Va'atem reish nun ish. But you are 250 men. Mevakshin kuna gedola. You want the high priesthood. You want to be kohen gedola. Afani reitze bekach. He joined in them. He says, I also want it. Schwer zu verstehen. It's difficult to understand this. The reish nun ish. These 250 men. Stay in a machlokes. They are standing in a discord, in a fight, an argument. Of their Kahuna Gedolah von Aaron against the Kahuna Gedolah of Aaron. Und will das wegnehmen von him, and they want to take it away from him. Wie is Shaykh? So how is it connect? As Moshe Rabbeinu, that Moshe Rabbeinu is sich kaviyachol mishtatev darin mizeh zusammen, that he is, so to speak, participating together with them. Zogendik, he says, okay, he just said it. Let's just say he just said it, but he doesn't really mean it. But how could he even say it? I also want this. Means that he's going along with everything that they're saying. Besides that, what did it add? How did he go and convince them? Why was it necessary for Moshe at all to add this? What could this impact? How could he influence the 250 men? The number 3, the Rebbe is going to ask, the Eibishter said that people are going to believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. So how could this be the whole of Bechlal Machlokes Korach? The Eibishter said B'choy Minu Lo'olam Al Gimel. B'chlolus Machlokes Korach Tzorich Lahav. Generally, the Machlokes of Korach we need to understand. The Eibishter hat zu gesagt Moshe. Hashem promised Moshe V'gam B'choy Minu Lo'olam, that also in you they will believe forever. When he was doing all the wonders, the miracles of Mitzrayim, the Eibishter said to him that, and they saw by Matan Torah, that the way the Eibishter spoke to him. So the Eibishter said to him, so they will believe in the Eibishter, but also believe in Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was right there, and everybody saw this. Is Vikum does Bechlal? How does it come at all as Korach soll kriegen auf Moshe, that Korach should argue and fight with Moshe? When Chol Adosai, and he and his entire community, Zolu nid gleiben, they should not believe as das was Moshe tut, that this that Moshe is doing. He assigned the Kohuna Gedola to Aaron, is weil Hashem shlachoni. As he says, Hashem sent me. It wasn't that he made this up. All the appointments were done by Hashem's sending him. Ubefrat, especially, it's difficult to understand how could, as the Rejnun Ish, that these 250 men that joined the Machlokes with Korach, Zanen Roshi Sanhedrois, they are the head of Sanhedrins. They are leaders of the community. How could they not believe in Moshe? Ubefrat, the Rebbe says, especially Leuten Biur from the Rambam, especially when we go according to the Rambam's explanation. Meforsha Torah and other commentaries of the Torah. As the Inyan for Bechoya Minu Lo'ilam, that this concept that they will believe in Moshe Rabbeinu forever is at it's a result from them, from the fact was Einenu Ro Veloizor, our own eyes saw it. It's quoting the Rambam. And no, not a stranger, we saw it, not someone else. Was Neinu Shamo, our ears, we're talking about the Torah says the Divris. Shamu Veloyachar. We heard it with our own eyes, not somebody else. Told us about it. Ha'esh, va'akoilos, we heard, saw the fire, we heard the noises, va'lapidim, all the sounds, and the flames. And Moshe came close to the cloud, to the cloud. And the voice was talking to him. And we heard Moshe, Moshe, go tell them, kach, so and so. So we witnessed this. That's what the Rambam says. That's the basis for believing in Moshe Rabbeinu, is because we actually saw it. Biz, to the extent, as the Rambam says, as oives kumt novi, that if a prophet comes, also and he does wonders, signs, and great proofs, and he seeks to contradict the prophecy of Moshe, our teacher. We don't listen to him. And we know for sure, clearly, that those signs that he's able to perform, this Navi, is balot v'kishuvim. They are sorcery, they are magicians, there's not true. Balot v'kishuvim. Why do we believe Moshe Rabbeinu more than the Navi? He's contradicting and he's proving. How do we know that his evidence is not valid? So as the Rambam says, Lefi shenevuas Moshe Rabbeinu eino al pi ha'is, because Moshe Rabbeinu's prophecy has not been established through the signs that he showed, proved us. Elo be'einenu ra'inu u'ba'oznenu shmanua. We saw it with our eyes. We heard it with our ears. Kimoi sheshamahu. Just as Moshe heard it, we also heard it. We heard as I'm speaking to him. So this is something which for all generations, nobody can challenge Moshe Rabbeinu. So Haman is more so in that generation itself. We're talking about the people that are with Moshe Rabbeinu, fighting now with Moshe Rabbeinu. Was those that man, b'chol hadoros. This that the Rambam discussed here, that no Navi can challenge Moshe Rabbeinu. That's talking about all the generations. Alachas kama v'kama, how much more so when we are discussing that generation. Taviken Zayin. So how is it possible? As Nochdam Alam, that after all this is Gikumen Korach. Korach came. Unit Zayin Dikenovi, he wasn't even a prophet. Ubefrat. And to show, to prove signs, he didn't show anything. Korach, he's convincing these 250 people. So He didn't show. So specifically, he wasn't a prophet. He didn't show any miracles. But how would he be able to tract and pull along an entire community of Jews to Kafir Zayin, the Moshe, to contradict and to deny Moshe as the Navi Shliach Hashem, that he is the prophet and he's the agent of Hashem. So how is it possible for them to go against Moshe Rabbeinu and challenge them? How was one Korach able to do that if they all saw themselves, all the miracles, the signs, and by Moshe Rabbeinu, they heard Hashem speak to him, as the Rambam discusses. In Ois Gimel, the Rebbe explains that the people, the Reishnon, we can say, they didn't actually deny the fact that Moshe was the agent of Hashem. They didn't challenge the authenticity that Moshe Rabbeinu is saying the truth. They were trying to change. We find sometimes there are certain circumstances that are changed. They wanted, the Rebbe will explain, that they wanted to have the 250, they wanted to be Kohanim Gedolim in addition to Aaron. Maybe Korach wanted to change. He believed that he is more fit, replace Aaron. But this wasn't by denying that this is what that Hashem's told him to do. Yes, that's what Hashem told him to do, but maybe there needs to be a change now. And even though in his words, the Rebbe says in Moshe Rabbeinu's words, we find as if they were argument is that Hashem didn't send him because Moshe is defending himself. But you're saying, but that was in Moshe Rabbeinu's humility. They didn't question that. They just wanted a change to the way it was till then, but they weren't actually challenging Moshe Rabbeinu. That's how we understand, because it doesn't really fit for them to challenge Moshe Rabbeinu's directives that they come from Hashem. Gimel. The explanation of this is mefurish in pasuk, as it is clear in the verse. Is kavonas machloikas Korach v'adose given. The intention of the argument of Korach and the group was as zobleiben und sein kehuna. They want that this should remain, and there needs to be kehuna. Nor ze alle sollen sein kohanim. They all wanted to be kohanim, gedolim. Ubikashtem gam kehuna. They wanted to be kohanim also. So based on this, we can say, as in Zayin Kriegen of Moshe, that when he argued for against Moshe and Korach, nit geleken, Korach did not deny, as Moshe is the Shliach Hashem, that Moshe is the agent of Hashem, und as das was hat getan früher, and that this that he has done earlier, Koilel Kuhuna, kommt nicht von Eberstein. He did not deny that, saying that what Moshe Rabbeinu did was not from Hashem. No, not at gehalten, but it was his opinion, as if das was Moshe had getan al pi Abaye, that this that Moshe has done by the instructions of Hashem, can men Moshe sein? We can add to it. Or we can ändern, or we can change. We find such a concept. Al derech b'durch tefillah ubakoshe. When you pray, when you ask, request Hashem, kemen oizbet, you are able to accomplish as the Eibishter soll verbeiten, that Hashem should exchange and remove a judgment decree. Okay, it's very similar. So we see that there is an ability to change. We saw this accomplishment from Moshe's tefillah la'achrei chet ha'egel. Moshe's davening after the sin of the egel. And after the sin of Meraglim are similar. Hashem said that he wanted to destroy the Yidden. And Moshe Rabbeinu's tefillah changed it all. So we see that you can impact the change from the way it was. Al derech zed the way Hashem wanted. Al derech zod Korach gehalten. Similarly, Korach was of the view as men can poil sein that you can impact. As der Eibishter soll zunehmen die Kuna Gedoyle von Arnen, that Hashem should take away the Kuna Gedoyle from Aaron. Und das sie übergeben zu Korach. Remove Aaron and give it to Korach. Und befragt, as by Kuna gefindt men Take, by Kuna itself, we find that there was changes. Who was the Koyer? As Friya, we find in the beginning before Isabedes Hakuna Shaykh given to Bechoides, that was connected the service of Kuna to the firstborn. Und danach, and later on, through the sin, hat man das von sie zugenommen. Then it was taken away from them und gegeben zu Shevet Levi, Aaron the bottom, and it was given to the tribe of Levi, to Aaron and his son. So it's already moved from the Bechoides to Aaron. So he says, let it move from Aaron to Korach. Ubefrat as his doiv damatan. There was actually a reasoning over here, because Aaron was connected to the Egel, at least he made the Egel in some form, and the tribes of Levi were constantly loyal. So Korach said, you know what? Befrat as his doiv damatam. There's a reason why Korach thinks that he is more fit to be the Kohen Gadol. Aaron had gehabt a gewisse Sheiches zum Cheta Egel. Aaron had a certain connection to the sin of the Egel. He was involved. And that was their Chet, is of the Sibet. It is the sin of the Egel which caused to the Welchem of the Kahuna übergeben to the Kohanim. That's why the Kahuna was taken away from the Bechoides and was given over to the Kohanim, So, on one hand, Aaron was involved a little bit, based as the Levi, but the Levites, Gans, Shevet, Levi, Korach, Bechlolom, the entire tribe of Levi, including Korach, they were totally clean from this sin. They weren't involved. The contrary, Kol B'nai Levi have milchama gat midi bos pro Aaron l'shimtzah. The B'nai Levi, they waged war with all those that Aaron has uncovered in the fact to the worship of the Avodah Zarah. That was the shimtzah that he did, and so they fought against it. So basically, the way the Rebbe is learning is that it's not that they were denying that Moshe, that they're going against Moshe, that Moshe did not represent Hashem, but what they wanted is a change in what Moshe Rabbeinu said. But if you look at the pasuk, the Rebbe is going to address now. When Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to convince them, he's saying, I want you to know that Hashem sent me. And this is not something that I made up, but we're just saying that they never argued that Hashem didn't send them. They just were saying that they want to change. So this is what the Rebbe explains now. Das, was Moshe hat angenommen und gesagt, this that Moshe accepted, and he said, as Korach v'chol adosei kumen kriegen efim mit der Teine. He is the one, in Moshe's words we see, that why is Korach and his community coming to argue on him with the argument, as loy havayish lochoni, that Hashem didn't send me. That wasn't really what Korach said. That was because of the humility of Moshe Rabbeinu. He attributed that that's what they're saying. He says the farvas Eish Moshe Onov Ma'id Mikola Adam Ashal Pnei Adam. Since the man Moshe was the most humblest from all people that are on the face of the earth, Hater Gehalten. So he was of the opinion, as Avtochas Hashem, that when Hashem promised him, so they'll believe in you forever. So how could they even think that they are challenging him? In his mind, it is because they don't believe that Hashem sent him, but the Eibshter promised him, but because of his great sense of humility, isn't this kaim gibor? He didn't think that it became fulfilled. Similar that Yaakov was afraid. Even though Hashem promised him, and he says he was afraid of Esau. Why was he afraid? So Rashi explains that maybe I've been dirtied myself with sin, and therefore he doesn't deserve anymore. Although he already had a promise before from Hashem. So this was also Moshe Rabbeinu could think so, that maybe it's not fulfilled, but the truth is that they didn't challenge his authenticity. They didn't challenge that he's truthful, what he says from Hashem, but rather they wanted to make a change to the way Hashem told them to do. Nois Daled, the Rebbe continues to explain this, that the Reish Nun also, just like Korach himself, wanted to replace Aaron, to change that. The Reish Nun wanted to add to Aaron and also serve as Kohanim Gedolim. Dalet, Al Pizei is move on. So based on this, it's understood Benegeya to the Reish Nun Ish as it relates to the 250 men. As they have not gemeint zu kriegen of Moshe. They had not meant, they weren't intending to disagree, to argue against Moshe, nor they have gewollt sein Kohanim Gedolim. What they wanted to be is they wanted it to be Kohanim Gedolim. Be Rashi is as madgish, as Rashi emphasizes, it va'atem reish nun ish b'makshim kona gedola. You 250 men are seeking kona gedola. As Rebbe says in the bracket now, that Korach wanted to replace Aaron, but the reish nun wanted to add to Aaron. Be'eshloimar as Korach had gewollt sein, alein kohen gadol b'mkoim Aaron. Korach wanted to be the only kohen gadol instead of Aaron. And the reish nun ish gewollt. And the 250 men, they wanted Allah sein Kohanim Gedolim. They all wanted to be great Kohanim, the high priest Kohanim Gedolim. The noisef of Aaron Kohen Gadol, to add an addition to Aaron Kohen Gadol. Was is given that Inyan Hachuka was mevakshim Kohanim Gedolim? What was this yearning, that desire that they seek for Kohanim Gedolim? Seine Midrashim Pirush Rashi Meisim Avayir. So the Midrashim and Rashi add and they explain. As Moshe Rabbeinu had gesagt, Af ani roitze bekach. He says, I also want this. In other words, the desire is good, but you can't bring it out into action. The Rotzen Zeirer Zaina Kohen Gadol, their desire that you want to be a Kohen Gadol, had Moshe gehabt. Moshe had that as well. As is a good and God hoiche zach. This is good, and it's a very high matter. Zeyer rotzin farguna gedola is not given to leave open srorov. The desire that they wanted, kuna gedola, was not they wanted a dominance. They wanted a leadership role to rule over the Yidden. Nor hayois, but rather since. As a Kohen Gadol is the Nivdal Mikol Yisrael. Since a Kohen Gadol is distinguished of all Yidden, he is Kodesh HaKadoshim, Holy of Holies. And is standing, Oimed Lifnei Hashem L'Shorsa, he's always standing before Hashem to serve Him. They wanted to be holy of holiest in their bechina umadrege from Kohen Gadol, in the level and the step and the darga, the madrege of the Kohen Gadol. Moshe Rabbeinu hat sich geantwortet given. Moshe Rabbeinu answered and explained to them, as haben arotzin to sein a Kohen Gadol is a gute Zach. To have a desire to be a Kohen Gadol is something very good. It's a good thing. I also want this. But in actuality, can sein nor Kohen Gadol echad. There can only be one Kohen Gadol. And now the Rebbe is going to explain, even though being a Kohen Gadol, in this case, they took the challenge, because just to be a Kohen Gadol for a while, to be the Ketores, as the Rebbe will bring examples from the Bayis Sheni, to go into the Beis Hamikdash, it was something that was kidai for them. Hey, Bazei is ober the Rotzik given as a stark, by them this desire was so strong. These are masking given to the extent that they agreed to Makriv Zayin Ketores, to offer this incense, while they knew the Asra of Moshe, the warning that Moshe warned, as Kulam Oivdim, everybody will be lost. They'll be lost. They were ready for that, ready to get lost. Abi lifishoton de aveda kedusha, as long, even temporarily, to do this holy service. Lamed l'shoris l'fnei Hashem, to stand and serve before Hashem. And durch them zayin berkavos l'fnei Hashem, and through that to be being close before Hashem. Bedugmas Nodav Avihu, similar to the story of Nodav Avihu, b'karvosum l'fnei Hashem v'yemus, as we learned earlier in the parsha, previously in the Chumash. So they were ready for that as well. And Valderech Habiyur, b'negeya the Kohanim Gedolim b'mei Sheni, similar to the explanation as it relates to the Kohanim Gedolim in the time of the Bayis Sheni. So over there, because they weren't scrupulous, they used to buy the Kohuna Gedolah, and they would die every year, the Kohen, because if you weren't a righteous Kohen Gadol, then you didn't Moshe Shnasei, and yet they kept on going in. Each one of them did not complete their year. I mean, they died before the year was up, because they entered into the Beis Hamikdash and they weren't worthy. And still they put an effort to be a Kohen Gadol. They would pay money to become a Kohen Gadol. It seems seemingly this is surprising. Since they had witnessed, they saw the previous Kohen Gadol and did not finish his year. They knew their level. As that also he isn't fit for this. What? How come that they still pushed to become a Kohen Gadol? Not that beer in them is, but the explanation is as mitzad goydel ritzoynu v'chuchoso, because of their great desire and yearning. So Ken and Arangin Kodesh HaKadoshim, to be able to enter the Holy of Holies, B'Yom Kippurim and Yom Kippur, from Goli, in a place where the divine rests in a revealed way, is Bazei given Alts Kedai, so everything was worth it. Afilu Asulibdem, even though he won't finish his year, and yet he wanted to go in, because just for that opportunity to be there with the Eibishter. Both. Based on this movement, we understand the Oichin Pshuta Shel Mikra. Now we see how even in the simple learning of the Pasuk, it expresses a greatness and an elevation in Machloikes Korach v'Hadassah, in this argument, the fight with Korach and his community. Vorum Canal. Because it's above. Since the Sibas the cause and what's the idea of their fight is given mitzad dem rotzin zu sein Kohen Gadol. They wanted to be a Kohen Gadol. Und Kodesh Lelekov, to be holy for Hashem. Kodesh HaKadoshim, to be in the holiest of holiest. Mannen is gekommen zu Korach v'Adosei der Rotzin zu sein Kohanim Gedolim. Where did they get that desire to be Kohanim Gedolim? Idos mudgesh bidvarov. This is emphasized, that idea, in the words that he used. He says, Ki kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim ubetoichem Hashem. The whole community is holy. Hashem is amongst them all. Umadua tisnasu gema. Why do you raise yourself? Why do you make yourself greater? They're touched in Tanchuma on Pirush Rashi. As the Tanchuma says, and Rashi brings it down. As kol ha'eda kulam kedoshim. The entire community is holy. Kulam shamu dvarim b'Sinai. All of them heard the words in Sinai mepi agvura from Hashem. Umadua tisnasu. Why do you raise yourself? Chulu lahoya l'cha levarer lachicha kahuna. You should not have chosen for your brother this kahuna. Loi atem levadchem shemaitem b'Sinai. It is not just you alone who heard at Sinai. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I'm God, your God. Everybody heard. So basically, you're not special because you're not the only ones. We all heard. By Matan Torah, how the Eibishter gesagt. What did the Eibishter say when he gave the Torah? Ba'atem tiyuli mamleches kohanim v'gei kodesh. Should be a nation. The whole nation will be kohanim and a holy people. State in Balaturim. So it's brought down in the Balaturim as b'Sinai b'shas Matan Torah, that in Sinai during Matan Torah is jeder Yid geworden in the Madrege von Kohen Gadol. Every Yid became on the level of a Kohen Gadol. And since as be'etzem is the shaykh to jedem, in essence it is belongs, it's connected to every Yid. Every Yid was a Kohen Gadol at Matan Torah. It's only that the sin has caused the riber the. This is why that experience at that level brought out the desire for Kuna Gedola by Korach and his community. So based on the above, the Rebbe continues in Ois Zayin that there is a positive about Korach and Adosai, that they had the Teshukah. They wanted Kahuna Gedola because they wanted to be at that level. That's why the name of the parsha is also Korach. Korach itself, without saying the Vayikach Korach, which represents the Machloikis, because the parsha is trying to actually teach us that there is something positive. In actuality, one is not permitted to be like Korach v'Chadosai, to argue on Moshe Rabbeinu. There's only one Kohen Gadol. But in the Rotzen, in the desire, that's something which is desirable. Oy Zayin. Let's look inside. So based on this, it is sweetened. Based on the fact that we're saying that there is a positive to Korach's wanting the Kahuna Gedola and Adosai, was der Nomen von Sedra wird angerufen in Minhag Yisrael, that the name of this Sedra, as it is called in the tradition, the Jewish tradition, was Torah here. A tradition is also a Torah, which means it's important. It's a part of Torah. So the name itself tells us was meant is nit. So what do we call it? Nit vayikach. We don't call it vayikach or vayikach Korach. If we say vayikach or vayikach Korach, that represents separation. That represent disagreements, fighting. So we don't call the parsha Vayikach or Vayikach Korach. What's made with the Targum Taich, which means, as the Targum translates, is Spala Korach. That Korach separated himself. Rashi, or as Rashi uses the language, Lokach Atzmu L'Tzad Echad. He took himself to one side, Lias Nechlak, to be separate, disagreeing. Metoicha Eda. He separated himself from amongst the community to complain about the Kahuna Chulu. So the parsha is not called Vayikach or Vayikach Korach, nor the word Korach Alein. All what we mention here is just Korach, without mentioning the Vayikach Korach. So we're not mentioning the Machloikis part, but we're mentioning only the Korach. So why is that? In them, just the name Korach is not der Mont Merumas Chetzelo. It's not mentioned and it's not hinted his sin. Machloikis of Moshe, his disagreement on his argument with Moshe and the fact that he complained about the Kahuna. So that's not mentioned. That's why we call it just Korach, vile. And the reason for that is the Hira was Medarf Aroistam for Parshas Korach. Because what is the lesson that we need to learn from the portion of Korach is not Nordish Lila. We're not just talking about what we should not do. That we should not be like Korach and his community that fought against Moshe. But Korach also tells us a positive matter. This desire was as is given by Korach, Verej Nun Ish, that was by Korach and the 250 men. Ba Moshe, and also Moshe said, that needs to be by every Jew. On the contrary, not only is it okay, but this is actually shows that they're in a right madrege. Dosis abavais, that is proof, that's evidence. They said, you're not the only one that heard. They heard from the mouth of the Gevura, of the strong one of Hashem. They heard, I am God your God, which means Havai is given Alikecha. That the level of Havai became your God, meaning became your Koyach Zayin Chayus. Your koyach and your chayis. So that's the positive. That's why you want to be a kohen gadol, because you heard this. However, as Torah and Nizayin der bepoil, but in actuality, that's not allowed to be der vayikach koyrach. To be vayikach koyrach firin amachloikis, to conduct in a disagreement, in the discontent of this fight. And to complain against the kahuna of them kohen gadol was the Eibishter bashtim durch Moshe on the kohen gadol, which Hashem appointed through Moshe. That's not allowed to. And to want to, in actuality, to become the kohen gadol, that's not allowed to be. There's only one Kohen Gadol. There was the Eibishter Beichel, the one who Hashem chose. However, the rots in their tzu, therefore bleiben. But one's desire to want to be a Kohen, that needs to remain. Reitze Bekach, he says, Moshe Rabbeinu says, I also want it, because that's positive, that's okay, that should be. The Rebbe is going to challenge this concept that he brought down, that there is an advantage in the Parshas Korach and Reitze Bekach, that everybody should want to be a Kohen Gadol. And the Rebbe brings a distinction that the Rambam says that everybody should want to be a Levi. Not only should want to be a Levi, can technically be a Levi in the spiritual level. A Levi is dedicated his life, separated from the people, dedicated his life to Hashem. in the service in the Beis Hamikdash. So everybody who wants to, on a spiritual level, dedicate his life can actually practically be a Levi in this spiritual sense. But we don't say this with regards to a Kohen Gadol. It seems like, why can't a Kohen Gadol write Sebekach and to be that level? That's what the Rebbe is going to explain now. Ches, l'chayre kemen fregen. So l'chayre, one can ask of them on the above. B'negei etzu shevet Levi, as far as it pertains to the tribe of Levi, was huvdal lavid es Hashem, who has been separated to serve Hashem, l'shorsoi, to worship Hashem, to serve Him, l'hoyres drachav, and to teach the ways, hayishorim, the straight ways, umishpotov, and the laws, hatzadikim, the righteous one, the rabbin to the many, chulu. That's the tribe of Levi that they do. Lefikach huvdal u'medarke oilam chulu. So therefore, they've also been separated from the ways of the world. Elohim chel Hashem. They are the army of Hashem. Zog the Rambam. So the Rambam says, V'lo shevet Levi bilvad. This is not only the tribe of Levi that can be on that level separated to serve Hashem and be separated from the world. Elokol ish ve'ish. But rather every person and person, every individual, whose spirit is benevolent, is gifting, and he understands the knowledge, to separate from the worldly matters, to stand before Hashem, to serve Him, and to worship Him, to know Hashem, and he removes from his neck the yoke of the many calculations that people seek. So if a person does that on the spiritual level, so he has been sanctified Kodesh Kodoshim. He's not born a Levi, but he becomes a Levi in the spiritual sense. Zetman. So we see as that in the spiritual service, everyone is applicable, applies to them the service of the tribe of Levi. To stand before Hashem to serve Him. And he becomes sanctified, holy of holy. So in that case, according to this, so this should be the same thing, should apply to the service of the Kohen Gadol. As the avodah ruchnis from Kohen Gadol, that the spiritual service of the Kohen Gadol, that should be belonging to each one. Is farvos zom and zogen. So why do we say, as there's darf bloy zayin, bekach? Why are we saying only that he wants? Don't say that he should do it. So why should there be only roitze bekach? But in actuality is mashma as oich beruchnis is nor kohen gadol. That in practically speaking, even as it is in the spiritual level of the kohen gadol, there's only one kohen gadol. But in those verstehen behagdim, so we'll understand this by introducing the Lefia now, based on the above, zet men do a verkehrten inyan in der avoide from Shevet Levi from Kohen Gadol. We see the opposite matter, the way it's in the service of the tribe of Levi and from the Kohen Gadol. The Negeya Shevet Levi, as far as the tribe of Levi, Zog the Rambam says, Kol ish chulash nodvo ruchay oisoi, that if their hearts gifts him, he has that desire, is benevolent to become like a Levi. He becomes in the tribe of Levi. Zogt aber nicht, but it still does. The Rambam doesn't say as jeder einer dar wollen und sich bestadel sein, that everybody should want and put effort in, if zu sein in der Beginne Madrege von Levi, that everybody has to want Reitzer to be a Levi. It says, practically, you can become a Levi if you're gifted and not liboy rucha, so you become a Levi. There's no place in which we say that the Reitze Bekach, you have to want to become a Levi. There's no desire to that. But as far as the Kohen Gadol, we say that is something everybody has to want. Everybody should want it. You can't become a Kohen Gadol, but you got to want to become a Kohen Gadol. You could become a Levi, but there's no place that says that you have to want to become a Levi, even though a Levi you could become. So why is that? Why is this the difference between the Kohen Gadol and the Levi? In Nois Tess, the Rebbe will bring out and explain these different the avodah of Yidden, of Levi, of Kohen Gadol, which will also explain the differences why the avodah of a Kohen Gadol you have to want, but you can't necessarily be there, and the avodah from Levi is what people can actually choose to be there, knowing the Reitze Bekach. But first, the Rebbe introduces the three levels in the service of Hashem, and then corresponding to that would be the three categories of Yidden. And then we will see how it answers the question why a Yid cannot be a Kohen Gadol, even Baruchnis, but has to have the desire, as we'll see inside. Tess is the Bir Bazet, explanation in this. In Avodas Hashem seinen do drei klolos dike beginnes. In service of Hashem, there are three general levels. There's mitzvahs, and then there's Torah, and then there's Mesiras Nefesh. He explains. Mitzvahs are connected with Gashmis. And Torah is in world, but it's beyond. And Mesiras Nefesh is totally beyond the world. Mitzvahs, Aleph, Zainen, Nislabish geworden in Dvorim Gashmi. Mitzvahs have been dressed up in physical matter. Example, tzitzis is B'tzemer Gashmi. Fulfilling the mitzvah of tzitzis, you need physical wool. Tefillin, to fulfill the mitzvah of tefillin, is B'klav Gashmi. You need physical parchment, v'chula, etc. Mitzvahs are connected with physical matter, which means das is the Aveda in und mit in Yon Olam. That's the service of Hashem in the world and with the worldly matters, which is to mevarer, to sort out, umezachich, refine, zain, the dvorim gashmi, the physical matters, umachon fun welt aklil elikus, and make from the world a vessel for godliness. That's the level of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs is in the world to change the world around the physicality of the world, make it into a dwelling place for Hashem. Base. Number two, Torah. Torah is hecher von his lapshus in Welt. Torah is higher than being dressed up in the world. Unafilu noch dem, even when the Torah has come down into this world. Noch dem was noso v'yordo b'seiser madreges v'chulu. It has come down and it has descended in all the steps. Quoting from the Tanya, and we have the thought, speech, and action can actually understand Torah because the Torah has descended. So still, notwithstanding the fact and that the Torah has descended to the level that we can grasp it, is the choshech from Welt nit malim of Torah. So the darkness of the world does not obscure, does not obstruct Torah. V'dedin is, as the halach v'dedin, words of Torah cannot be mekabel tumah. If a person is tumah, he's still supposed to be learning Torah because the words of Torah don't accept tumah. So what does this represent in the service of man? What's this Torah do? The perishus and Havdalah for the separation, separating himself, and this. And distinction from the matters of the world. Mitzvahs is in the world, and Torah is separate from the world. But the level of Gimel is Mesiras Nefesh, is Hecher, Al Pi Torah, that according to the Torah, Mesiras Nefesh is higher from the midah v'hagbala from Torah mitzvahs, from the measure and limitations of Torah mitzvahs. Mesiras nefesh is beyond. In Yonah is the yichud udveikes mitalakus. Mesiras nefesh idea is the union and the cleaving with godliness, beyond any measure and any limitation. So now these three avodas of Torah, of mitzvahs, Torah, Mesiras nefesh, is really the three categories by Yid. Yud, the drei avodas anal, seine Bechlolus, the drei madreges klolius, was seine do by Yid. They're the generally three steps that exist by Yid. Aleph. Reuv b'nei Yisrael is avedosum min an oifen von haneg bahem minag derech eretz. Majority of the Yidden, their service is in such a way that you deal with the world, the way of the world, working in the world. Beginning with those who actually literally occupy themselves with work, which is Odom Chodesh, Odom Zereya, the person plows, the person sows. And also when you're doing the physical work, is memekayim the mitzvahs, you observe the mitzvahs. So that's on the very literal level. Bisu that avodah for yederin, to the extent every Jew, even if you're not working physical work, is vasich oisik, is kol mashecha, is in vos is zich oisik, in kol masech Yerushem Shemayim. He occupies himself that everything that you do should be for the sake of heaven. And in all the ways that your ways you still know Hashem. It is Morin Uvdin Tovim. This is the masters of good deeds. Basically, people whose main the category is action. They are involved in action, whether it's physical work to recognize Hashem and do mitzvahs there, or the work in Masech L'Shem Shemayim, to acknowledge Hashem and to see Hashem in all the things that you do. Basically, it's more than Tovim. Then base, the second category is the Avodah for Shevet Levi. That's the service of the tribe of Levi. Vos Huvdal, Lavedis Hashem. He has been separated to serve Hashem, L'Shorsei, to work for Hashem and to serve Him. L'Hoides Drochim Aishorim Mishpota Batzadikim Barabim, to instruct the correct path, the laws, the righteous laws to the many. Shenemar, as the Pasuk says, this is finishing up the quote of the Rambam that the Rebbe said before too. They will teach your laws to Yaakov, to the Yidden, and the Torah to Yisrael. That's why they have been separated from the ways of the world. But this in a general, we call this is the masters of Torah. The Levi is like the master of Torah, master of Udin Tovim, master of Torah. Gimel. On the third level is the Avodah from HaKoyen, the service of Kohen, Befrat from Kohen Godel, especially when we talk about a Kohen Godel. Pastorni Taroiz came from Yerushalayim, who's not allowed to leave Yerushalayim. Conceptually, Yerushalayim means Yireh Sholem, hold the greatest wholesomeness in awe and fear of Hashem, meaning he always has to be at that level. Hoshleimus HaYireh is the Avodah for Mesiras Nefesh. This wholesomeness of Yireh is the service of Mesiras Nefesh. Unochmer, and even more, Umin HaMikdash LaYetze, cannot go out from the Mikdash, which means in Yonei Yishtein in Ashtendike Farenikov, its idea is that he's constantly standing united and connected in his chabrus with Neibishn, always connected with Hashem. That's a Kohen, the Kohen Gadol. These that avoidam yuchet as a Kohen Gadol today, until we reach that special service that yuchet the Kohen Gadol, the Knisa b'Yom Kippurim, Achaz Bashon and Kodesh Kadoshim, entering Yom Kippur once a year in Kodesh Kadoshim. But this is the Gilui, the Tenua, the Inyan for Mesiras Nefesh. That is openly that idea of Mesiras Nefesh. When it comes to Yom Kippur, Yechida liyachdoch, the level of Yechida to unite with Hashem beyond any limitation, without any Hagbola. That comes at the climax when it comes to Yom Kippur. So now in Nois Yud Aleph, the Rebbe explains, now we can understand why we all have to have the Reitza of the Avodah of the Kohen Gadol Mesidas Nefesh. That has to be either of the two Avodas, Morin Torah, Morin Uvdin Tovin. It can't be all the time Mesidas Nefesh, but in our Torah and our mitzvahs has to be the Reitza Bekach. But the Levi, we can't say over there. Most of the people are Morei Uvdin Tovin, but sometimes you can make an Iker to become also Morei Torah. Let's look inside. Yud Aleph. Based on this, we can explain the Tzvei Kitzoves Anal, the two extremes of above. That a Kohen Gadol you have to want to be, but you can't be there. A Levi you can be, but there's no need for you to want to be there. The two extremes, as far as the service of the Shevet Levi, which we all could become that way, but there's no reason to want it, and Kohen Gadol, which we cannot be there, but we still got to want it. But from ein Zayt is the Avodah from Levi. On one hand, is Avodah Levi Shaykh B'Poel Tziyad Meinim. That is actually applies to every Yid as a constant contact. You could be a Levi. Masha'enken the Avodah from Kohen Gadol, but the service of the Kohen Gadol, dar zayin no reitze bekach. All what you can do, you want it. But leidach, on the other hand, is the Avodas HaLevi nit kein chiyuv ve'echrich of yeder. It's not obligation on everyone. If not Varucha, then you'll become a Levi. Anders is the Avodah from Kohen Gadol, but the Kohen Gadol Avodah, everybody, you all want, you have to want it. See, the nefesh of the Kohen Gadol, whether you're a Levi or Yisrael, whether you're more Uvdin Tovin or you're separated like a Levi, a Torah, but you still got to do Mesidas Nefesh. But you don't have to be a Levi. You don't have to be more Torah. You can be only more Tovin. In the Avodah, for the Zayndik Ba'ina Mazeh, the service of a Yid while he's in this world. We have the two above mentioned services. The person's work with himself. And the Avodah in Welt and the service of the world. Bechlolus is does the chiluk. Generally, that would be the difference. For Mori Torah, Mori Uvdin Torah. The people that learn Torah, they're just by themselves. That's for their own growth. Mori Uvdin Torah, doing good deeds, that's for the world. Was the Iker Avodah Neroah for Yed and Eden. So what is the main service? And what is the lesson? What does every Yid have to do? Is that Esek B'Kiyum HaMitzvahs. So that's something which we have to occupy ourselves with mitzvahs. That's the bottom line for everyone. That way, we accomplish a dwelling place for Hashem in the lower worlds. So that's a necessity, is mitzvahs. Modern Uvdin Tovin. Change the world around. However, if somebody wants to become also a Morei Torah, if your heart or spirit is benevolent, you can also have your main service in Morei Torah, move to Legamri from to be separated from matters of the world. So you work with the world, but you can also be a Levi. Avodah from Kohen Gadol, but to be a Kohen Gadol all the time, which is level of Mesidas Nefesh, you can't do that. The Veik is kasher b'Hashem b'oifim Mesidas Nefesh, to be cleaving and connected to Hashem in a way of Mesidas Nefesh is nit kein seder kavu l'chol echad ve'echad b'chol yom. That's not a set order for each one and one every day. We can't say be a kohen gadol, be Mesiras Nefesh every day. That's not a set thing. Avodas Hashem, in the service of Hashem, that Avodas Kohen Gadol es darf aber sein der Reitze bekach. But you have to want it, but you can't be that. By Beida Avodas, by both services of the person, whether you are Amorin Uvdin Tovin or you're Amorin Torah, you're also a Levi, you need Rotzim Mesiras Nefesh, Darbeim Zayin der Rotzim, that you have to have the desire of to Zayin Dovuk Umekusher Lelakus B'Mesiras Nefesh, to cleave and be tied to godliness with self-sacrifice. Nor hayois as the kavon neverotzuna atzmus is, but since the intent and the wish of the atzmus is as the soul zayin, anisham beguv b'olam hazeh, there should be a soul and a body in this world. Und dort mekayim zayin rotzon Hashem, and over there he should do the rotzon Hashem. He said, he wants to sit his nefesh, but the Eibishter wants him to be here, so he fulfills the Ratzon Hashem. He's a so he does his service below in einem von the Tzurfanim Anal, in one of the two ways, either Morin Uvdin Tovin, either mitzvahs or Torah or Levi. In Iker Havoide Binyonim Gashmim the Kima mitzvahs, whether his main service is in physical matter, observance of mitzvahs, Machan developed Fadira Lo Yisbarach, to make the world for a dwelling place for Hashem, blessed, or the Rakoponim, or at least Vidar Mitne Adam, that minority of people, Mori Torah, masters of Torah, Obkishet Kinyon Gashmi, separated from physical matter. Und Davke B'Shas Es Is Dod the Reitz Bekach, only specifically only when there is, you want this, as that your desire and your yearning is to be connected to Hashem. You want to be a Kohen Gadol. So then you accomplish in a wholesome way, in Yederer for the Beida Avedas, both of these Avedas. Warum nicht Welt mitzad Atzmei is bei ihm atachlis bifnei Atzmei. Because the world itself, in of itself, isn't a goal in of itself. It's not the world itself. Und nicht the precious von Welt is bei matachlis bifnei Atzmei, and not the separation from the world. The Morei Torah is a goal by itself. It's all a goal because of his connection to Hashem and his yearning and teshukah to Hashem. And we're a person, as the Baal Shem Tov says, we're a person. He wants to be there. He finds himself. In every service, his want, his desire, and his thought is connected to Hashem. And then you merit as his verb poil that then it comes down in actuality, the revelation of the future. Then it will be fulfilled as the Levim will sein Kohanim. The Levim will be the Kohanim. Every Yid will be on the level of a Kohen Gadol. Balturim says, as la'osid lavi tachzer lahem, that in the future will be returned to them. That inya for Kuna Gedoyla, the Balturim says, quoted earlier, that the Yidden were all experienced by Matan Torah, the level of Kuna Gedoyla, and in the future they'll have it again. Shenemar, ba'atem kohanei Hashem tikro. You will be called the Kohanim of Hashem. In the Geula Amitis Vashlema, in the true and complete redemption, Ayidei Mashiach Tzidkenu, through Mashiach Tzidkenu, then as well Zayin, Moshe, Aaron, Imohem, against the Levi, Moshe and Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, Imohem, and all of the Yidden will be on that highest Madrega. This is Mesichas Shabbos Parshas Korach, Tavshin Lamed Gimel, and Tavshin Lamed Dal.